Thank you for joining. Welcome back to my page. And if you have not been here before, remember that growth is inevitable through life experiences, knowledge, and understanding. Excuse me while I get everything set up. I am trying to make sure everything is set in stone for you all. I had two cameras recording a close up so you can see descriptive details while I'm putting things in the pot, and also the utensils I'm using. However, that footage will not be shown, so excuse the other footage. If you see a camera that I'll be showing and stuff like that, you won't be able to see that footage. However, this here is perfect. This is actually what I wanted. So there is our bacon that I will be starting off with. I like to fry my bacon. It, for me, is super crispy, and it makes great for bacon bits, or for it to pretty much break down instantaneously. And I like to cook it like that all the time. Yet I will be adding this bacon into my cabbage, so I'm going to go ahead and open the package up as you see me doing now. And I'm preparing, washing off my knife. There's a cutting board to the right of me. There is meat, that's pork, on the left. So you want to make sure that you stay tidy and always wiping down and clean. And as you see me, just rinse off the knife, so there is no cross contamination. Excuse me, from bacteria. As you can see, I'm going ahead and I'm frying the bacon. While I'm doing that, I'll go ahead and give you a fast forward of what is coming ahead. I am going to be making sweet and savory carrots. Some people like to call them candy carrots. I did put cinnamon, allspice, butter, and a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion powder, and some sugar, white sugar and brown sugar. I love powders. I tend to use those a lot, so you will see me developing the flavors, adding those powders and stuff like that. I usually I use salt. I use everything. I just try to use different things in moderation, other than some of those salts and lures and some of the other seasons that people may use a lot, but it contains a lot of sodium, and so there's different ways to create different flavor profiles. Don't forget to wash your hands, as you see now. I am very, I'm not cliche. That's not a bad thing. I just like to do things different. There's times where you'll see me doing a tutorial or cooking where everything will be set out. My mise en place, which is MISEENPACE, if I'm not mistaken, and that is a French term for having everything in place. This cabbage was very pretty, and let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I had about 5 to 6 heads, so that was about 5 or 6 pounds maybe. When you break it down, it does. Once you cut it up, it won't be a lot. And then also when you cook it, also will cook down. So here, do not use these leaf lettuce here. Excuse me, not the leaf lettuce, but the leaves of the cabbage. Those are green, they're thick, you can feel them. They tend to go bad first. In the market, that's the first thing you see around cabbages, all the leaves on the outside due to people cleaning them in the store. But this is called cleaning cabbage. So every single one of the cabbages, I am ripping off the extended big leaves that we have on them, and you can see they're wilted and not good, and that one's good. Also, when I go back and cut, or excuse me, while I'm cutting and breaking down the cabbage, you'll see me tearing off and ripping and still doing additional cleaning to the cabbage. You'll also see that when I'm cleaning the turnips, which is a little bit ahead of the video. You just want to make sure that your leaves are clean. Even though you're going to wash them multiple times, you want to make sure that they're clean. Make sure you cut the core out of the cabbage. That's what I'm displaying there. Um, when you do cut the cabbage, I'm displaying to make sure you wash the cabbage. When you're cutting the cabbage, you can cut it in half, and then you can go back and cut a triangle right where the core is. You'll see this in a little bit. I will be showing the cabbage cut in half, and you can see the core. You'll see the different color context in it. Don't forget to use utensils. I'm using these tongs that are long, preferably for grills. However, I am frying bacon, so there is grease. You want to be careful. Make sure that you do not burn yourself, or any grease does not pop on you. So I'm also looking for a plate. I like to make sure all my utensils are somewhere where I know I'm going to be using them multiple times, and where there can be still and they're still sanitary. Excuse me. Those that bowl that I just shown, that was the lentils that I soaked last night. That is literally 4 bags of lentils, so that's why it's so much. You'll even see that I'm multitasking, which is a key principle and key concept in cooking. Clean as you go. This is where the illustration of the core comes in. That's right there in the core, and as you zoom in, you can literally see the core. It's a triangular, and the way that the cabbage grows out of the ground, it's almost not a straight triangle, but it's more rounded. So I'm coring, I'm cutting, I'm cleaning as I go along. I wanted to make sure that we stay on topic with the video as I continue to explain. So I'll backtrack, and I'll take you all um, to what I was saying earlier. I'm not going to be doing videos all the time to where the mise en place, and mise en place is a French term. Mise en place is a French term for everything being in place. That means that if you're cooking all of this here, everything is usually already prepped. However, like I said, I like to just go with the flow, whatever like that sometimes. And also sometimes I might not feel like talking. Literally, you can see that I'm moving very fast. This is how I like to move. That is the size of the cabbage that I just cut up. Cut it down into small cubes. They also will cook down even more. So whatever is the size that you cut it, that's what it's going to be, and it will get a little bit smaller. So you don't want them too big, and you don't want them to be too small. Make sure that most of your stuff is consistent in your cuts and consecutive, because when you do cook them off, they will have an effect on the product. If something's cut bigger, it'll cook a little bit longer. If it's cut smaller, it's going to cook a little bit faster. So you have to monitor those things, and always be thinking, always, that was improper English, but I'm just going to go ahead and flow with it. I'm always be in tune on what your end result is, what you're looking for. Do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? So that's why I don't use recipes. You can literally see me in the entire video, not look at one thing. I'm sprinkling seasonings, I'm tasting, I'm going along, and that's what I like to do. People ask me sometimes, what do you want to put in this? What do you want to put in that? The question is, what do you like, and what do you like to taste, and how do you like to eat it? Whether it's a different cooking method, whether it's a certain ingredient, or what have you. Learn, what makes meats tender. Learn what steaming does to certain things. That's how you develop skills as a cook. If this is something that you would like to do, or even become better at the house. Also, make sure you keep. Sometimes I have a bowl. I'm actually showing a bowl right now, but this is not going to be the bowl that I'm talking about. It's good to keep a bowl for waste. That way, you don't have to keep double making trips to the trash can. Just grab a pot, something deep or whatever like that. Maybe even a bowl, like I said, and just all of those leaves that I keep going to the trash and throwing away. Even though the trash is open, I'm not touching it. And I do have a trash where, for sanitary purposes, you can step on it and the lid opens. But to avoid sanitary issues and back and forth and less time in the kitchen, just have a bowl, empty it out every, so on. When it gets filled up, you don't want it to look too unsanitary. But that'll keep you from too much moving around. You should be able to stay in one place doing all of your prep. So as you can see, also my bacon is cooking while I'm breaking down my cabbage. I also have to wash the cabbage, as you can see me breaking it down, cutting it into the cubes, and placing it in the sink where I will be washing it multiple times. And I also already rinsed it individually. You'll also see with cabbage, there is a lot of residue and dirt that comes off of them because they do come out of the ground. I like to work like this. Some people are like, how are you able to move that fast with a knife? It's just experience. Please be careful, and do not cut yourself. Advisory, kids that are watching, adults that are watching, if you do not have the experience, please do not attempt anything that you have not done or that you don't feel comfortable with. You can see the cutting board moving around. I don't like to there's certain things that you should do. If you're using a cutting board, you should place a wet towel underneath. Now I'm just educating as you are watching the rest of the procedures here. And as I move along, I'll add other things as well. Yet continuing, when you are using any type of cutting board, it's good to use a paper towel, a cloth, anything a little bit damp, and place it underneath the cutting board, not where the cutting board is lifted off of the counter, but just enough to where the cutting board is not moving. This prevents you from cutting yourself. It prevents the cutting board from moving. As I check the product of my bacon, and it's got a little bit more time to go. But yes, you'll see me with the cutting board moving. That's not the greatest idea. However, when you're moving this fast and you're experienced and you're multitasking, and I know exactly, what I'm doing, where everything is going, and what's the next step, then, to each its own, but at least I was able to let you know that way you can prepare properly. Excuse my little ditties here as I am listening to music, just rolling and being in my element while I am coming to the end of the cabbage. And this is still the first batch of bacon. There's going to be a second batch of bacon going in, and then we'll get started with the rest of the procedures. I'm going to move on a little bit due to I'm not going to talk entirely through this entire 3-hour process. I'm just going to give you the meat of it, and then I'm going to allow you to continue to watch comfortably. If you have any questions, any concerns, feel free to inbox me. This is pretty much free cooking lessons here. So if you do feel as though you may want something of that nature as well, feel free to contact me as well. And there are other available services I do offer under my playlist. Feel free to subscribe as well and tell your friends. I've been cooking for 20 years. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of background if you are coming to my page for the first time. From Philadelphia. Been cooking for 20 years plus. Went to Le Cordon Bleu in Georgia. I obtained my associate's degree in culinary, which was a 2-year program. And then I went on to obtain my associate's as well as my bachelor's degree. I currently work with kids now, and I still am cooking, supervising, operating, and managing my not my own kitchen under my name, yet my own kitchen under another company that is great, and I have been with them for some time now. I have the bowl to the right hand side lined with paper to soak up the oil that will drain off of the bacon, and also I'll have these things ready to go for the next dishes. Let me reiterate by saying we are making cabbage, just in case I didn't, but I think I did. Candied carrots, rice, and lentils. Lentils is a grain. It's a dish all in itself. Sometimes people put so many different things on lentils because of, well, if you cook it simplistic with just lentils, it could be a little bland. You may have to um, make sure that your season game is up to par. And don't be afraid to over season. If it's a powder, do not be afraid to over season. If it's salt, yes, moderation, a little bit at a time until you can taste those flavors come out. And just in case anyone is unaware, salt is the only natural flavoring. Salt is an agent that lists things in my description. It brings out the true flavors and the true taste. Salt also preserves. Salt is a lot of, you can use salt for a lot of different things. You can also cure with salt, with different salts. Um, Again, of course, make sure you stay clean. I am wiping down. I am beginning to wash the cabbage. I wanted to note and add another tidbit on the lentils. In my lentils, I am putting seasonings, tomato paste, some diced tomatoes, and turnips in my lentils. If there is anything specific that you may want to inquire about, like, hey, I watched your channel and I like the way that it looked or may have came out, I'm willing to not give the entire recipe without conversation. Yet I am would be willing to at least tell you, what I put in there. That way, you can use your judgment if there's something that you like or that you don't like. A lot of people have a lot of allergens. That's why I don't believe in recipes, because if there's something that someone's allergic to, or let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't believe in them. It's just when I'm cooking for myself or someone that doesn't mind or is not limited or anything like that, then yes, I free for all. And it's when I mean free for all, I'm thinking in my head flavor profiles that I want to create. I'm thinking of flavor profiles that I would like to taste, because there's an endless amount of ways to cook anything. Some people cook macaroni and cheese with sour cream in it. Some people use cream cheese and macaroni and cheese, and even those two things are not common for macaroni and cheeses. So I might have given some people some ideas, but others, they know exactly where I'm going with it. Macaroni and cheese is nothing but dairy, and when it comes to it, people get so, I guess, traditional, I'll say, when it comes to these dishes, that it's like, oh, hey, you're only able to do it one way, or no. If there's a cheese that you would like to taste or try on a macaroni noodle and call it macaroni and cheese, then you go ahead and feel free to do it. And I guarantee you that you'll probably like the outcome better than how you have been making your whatever all of these years. So it's just good to try different things, not be closed minded. If you see something different, don't be like, turn your face up. We're cooks. I'm a chef. I've been in this industry for years. This is what we do. So you have to be open minded, and you have to be willing and able to try different things. When I was in culinary school, my chef, if you want to spit it out, that's fine. But the thing was, at least taste it, put it in your mouth or whatever like that. Another thing is, I always wonder why my chefs, well, some of them stay slim. And he gave me a little tidbit and said that all of the food he tastes or whatever like that, he has a trash can right next to him and he'll taste it and spit it out. And I'm like, to a student, that's offensive, you know. But all he does is taste for the flavor, and then he spits it out right there because he doesn't want to consume the food due to um, all day of someone letting you try their food, that maybe mashed potatoes and stuff like that, and then you are consuming a high dosage of carbohydrates or fat. Because you have multiple students throughout the day at different times, and maybe that same class. I mean, I would get tired of the same thing. I'm like, you're tasting eggs for a week straight because you're on Foundations 1. For people that are familiar with the culinary lingo and stuff like that. So it's like tiresome. It is great to have bowls and clean as you go along, as well as I am doing now. Make sure you clean as you go as well. That way, everything is not piled up at the end as well. Every task that I am doing, I'm finishing and completing it. And if I'm not finishing it and completing it in its totality, then I'm definitely moving it aside to where it's organized and I am aware of what I am doing next, which is a must. Make sure that you know what's next. That way you can use your time wisely and be productive. I'm telling you, cooking is very time consuming. I mean, you get into it and stuff like that, and next thing you know, it's 3 and 4 hours later. And people sometimes, you're in the kitchen and they're like, what's taking so long? And, especially me, sometimes I'm cooking for other people and they're like, are you coming out anytime soon? And they smell the aroma for 2 and 3 hours, and then they're like, where's the food at? So that was my tea that I poured in my little in my mug. I made some tea this morning. I wanted to make sure that I was relaxed while you all were relaxed, as you are being entertained as well as learning. I'm displaying the quantity that I have of the cabbage. Even though it's cooked down, remember that that cabbage is firm, and if I wouldn't even be able to put all of that cabbage in that one pot at the same time. I'm going to go ahead, like I said, and continue. That way, we'll be at least halfway through the video by the time I conclude the audio. How I am cooking this cabbage today, like I said, there's many ways of cooking anything. I'm not going into detail of how to cook everything and anything because it's just too much. You have to learn how to use your mentality and see what's best for you, and especially if you have special dietary needs as far as vegan, vegetarian, and stuff like that. What's the best cooking method for your dietary needs? This is our bacon fat that I'm using in my cabbage. So it is going to be bacon as well as bacon fat in there um, to develop some flavors. I don't put a lot of oil in there. You are technically doing a light fry to a saute, because really there's no way to fry cabbage hard like that. How really most people would like to, because you will literally have to fry it a little bit at a time and move it out of the pot and continue to do that. And if I was to do that with all four of those bowls, I would literally be there probably some time, and then all of that just to put it back in the pan and to continue to cook it, because you can't really consume it like that. You still have to put it back on the stove and steam it, and of course season it, and putting steam already seasoned, already putting seasonings on cabbage and then placing the cabbage in oil is going to not be good. It's going to burn the seasoning, it's going to burn your oil, and you're not going to have a good product. I just showed you a pre-seasoned pan. Excuse me. I had my fried bacon that I had in that blue pot. I took the oil out, and I'm using that same pan to now start the procedure for my lentils. Any type of grain cooks for a long, cooks fairly long. However, the soaking the day before is the reason that most people are familiar with for. But let me rephrase that. Most people are familiar with this procedure, but the reason why you soak the any type of grain the night before is to clean the grain from all dirt, and to it reduces the cooking time. When you soak any type of grain, the grain absorbs water. Well, it absorbs whatever pretty much you put in it, which is the liquid. I won't say water, I'll just say the liquid. It absorbs the liquid. So when you seen the bowl that I displayed earlier of the lentils were all the way filled to the top. That's a good sign that they're nice and swollen with water. Now, most people, when they cook beans or any type of grain, they'll put they'll add more water when they put the grains in the pot, and sometimes that's not the best move, because it could develop too much liquid. I was in band, so excuse my performances with the lids of the pots. That was my that was my reenacting of the cymbal players. So as right now, I used 2 to 4 ladles of bacon. No, excuse me. I used the bacon fat to start off with, and additionally down the line, I added probably 1 or 2 more ladles of the bacon fat. And that bacon fat is pretty much just coming from the oil that I was frying the bacon in. And I literally, you see how much bacon I fried, so it accumulates, and all of that is just nothing but goodness, as I like to call it, because fat is grease. Not to if you consume it in of course too much of it, yes, heart attacks can occur. So please be careful with how you are using any type of oils or fats. There's so many saturated and unsaturated fats and cholesterols and poly and all the other ones that can cause health issues. So please be careful. That is the bacon there. It's all nice and crispy. I have 2 onions on the cutting board that I'm getting ready to cut up to place in the lentils. And I am using the bacon grease right now. Also in my lentils, lentils are a grain, so they do absorb fats, so the oil does not spill out and it's not going to be oily at the end of the procedure. This is red palm oil, so excellent as far as health conscience and for cooking. You can see I'm over there at the other camera, but like I said, we won't be able to see that footage due to some extra things that I had to go through that I'm not going to go through. So at least this is all still learning from me as I get everything going for you all. This is nothing but a learning experience for anyone who is wanting to cook or learn how to increase their skills. And let me go ahead and continue with the red palm oil. But red palm oil you can use on your skin and you can cook with it, and it also has a lot of other health issues that are very good, and vitamins in it. I'm not going to name them because I don't know all of them and I don't want to give you all the wrong information. That's onions right there. I just cut the tips off. I do have some basic tutorials on my page under my playlist cooking, and some how-tos on how to cut an onion, how to cut butternut squash and stuff like that, because it all starts with prepping. You can't cook if you don't even know how to cut, or you don't know how to use a knife, or we call it in culinary industry knife skills. I'm going to be dicing these onions and placing them in the blue pot again for preparation for the lentils. Again, when you do see the lentils, I was zooming in so you'll be able to see, but there wasn't any water on top, but there was just enough on the bottom. And like I said, that is because those grains release those liquids during the cooking process. And you don't want to have watery lentils or watery black eyed peas and stuff like that. You just want that, just enough that volume and texture and body to where it's nice and thick and almost creamy, and you still have whole grains. You know, sometimes you also don't want to cook your grains down to where they're mushy or almost looking like refried beans, because that's what refried beans is anyway. Most people don't know they're just pureed beans. So yes, as we go through here and I'm cutting the onions, breaking them down, same thing, make sure your onions are consistent. As I'm grabbing some bowls here to organize myself, that way I can put the onions in the bowl and start on the next prepping task. As you can see, literally I'm prepping everything. I have not stopped prepping. I'm still cooking, but I'm prepping. Prepping is so important. Make sure you do it before you start cooking or while you're cooking, and make sure your time management is excellent, because if it's not, you will find yourself to where you have to take something off of the stove or move something off of the fire because you don't have your stuff ready because you didn't prep it. So make sure that everything's prepped, everything's ready, so you don't have to stop, so you don't have to risk the fact of burning your food or waste any of your time. You want to be productive the entire time, moving through, and once you get this mastered, you'll also start to see that you have some additional time to maybe do other things, like wash the dishes as I'm doing now. I like to wash the dishes in between because most likely I'm using that strainer again. I'm using those things multiple times, and nobody wants to sit up there and wash 100 dishes because you decided to use multiple bowls, and then you look over and they're sitting up there all piled up at the sink waiting for you because they're not going anywhere. I hope you all are continuing to be safe during this quarantine. I'm gonna have to do a separate session under my Talvine Talks to explain to you all how pretty much YouTube and starting on my platform saved my life almost, or not almost saved my life. It did save my life. You know, when you make different decisions and stuff like that, and you're doing positive things, and you're not doing foolish things in the street anymore. Hey, you know. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. However, I'm going to go into a description at a later date. Make sure you know while you're multitasking that you are keeping up with whatever is on the stove. That way, nothing is burning, nothing is overcooking. You're still monitoring what's going on. You know everything that's going on. You should be aware of everything that's going on while it's going on and before it goes on. And you say, hey, how can you understand what's going on before it goes on? Well, you should know that this ABC is going to be cooked in this amount of time. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on it. You're turning it. You're not allowing it to burn. You're not allowing it to sit. Because cabbage does require attention. You can't just throw it in the thing and think that it's going to do its job. It requires motion. It requires movement. When you're saute, move the vegetables around, move your things around, toss it, shake it. You know, people make fun of chefs about, you know, shaking the pan all the time, but I'm telling you, all of that is getting those flavors in throughout the product, as well as making sure that everything is cohesive, everything is blended well. So you will see me looking like a crazy person sometimes, twisting and turning and everything like that. And it's also to control the cooking time. I can make sure, I can cook things faster if you are making sure you're doing the correct thing. I mean, if you put onions in a pan and you just let it sit there, you're gonna notice that the bottom of the onions are gonna be nice and done, but the tops are gonna look crazy. If you continue to toss it very quickly and have the heat on high or medium high, then you'll be able to cook the product quicker. Or low and slow is always a great way to go. You don't have to really pay attention to it. You know it's not going to burn. So I like that method as well. Sometimes I just kind of put something on the stove. Actually, the lentils is a great example of this. Lentils and any type of grain takes so long, and as you can see, I'm so focused on the cabbage to make sure. And I know that I still have those 2 bowls of cabbage now that I just picked up. One of those bowls of cabbage I just picked up to work with it. But I still had those grains, the lentils on the stove. I know I have 2 and 3 and 4 different other procedures to do and even more prep to do. So I have the lentils on the stove. I'm making sure that um, everything is consistently happening and I'm aware of everything that goes on. That way, when you're ready to work with it, it's ready for you and you are ready for it. Whether it's to add the seasonings, add vegetable stock or whatever it is. So again, I will go over the cabbage. I started out with oil and fat only as I fried the cabbage a little bit at a time. And the difference between frying and searing is that frying requires oil that is 2 to 3 to 4 inches deep, or product is submerged in the oil or grease. That is frying. Confit, I'll throw that one in there as well. Is confit will be similar, but it's not the same. It is product that is engulfed and submerged into fat. However, it's not on a stove. It's actually baked on a certain temperature that's low and slow, to where you have a tender, cooked all the way through product that's still whole on the outside and is not broken down. Frying is the same way; it's whole and stuff like that and cooked throughout. But If you know what I'm talking about, or you do your research, look up sous vide. And even I'll give you an example like sous vide and beets. The beets will still be whole, they won't be breaking apart, and it'll be tender throughout. And if you are aware of beets, beets are very, very, very firm and hard and non-edible in the most um, way possible. You do have to cook those properly. I'm just consolidating my tea, guys. I'm showing you everything. I'm just consolidating my tea and doing a little bit of cleaning up on this portion of the video. So I went over frying, I went over sous vide, and then searing. Searing is a little bit of oil on the bottom, and you drop whatever the product is on one side and allow it to sear, not fry but sear. So those are the three categories to where fat and oils are used a lot, or used in different ways that are kind of similar, but they're still different techniques. Again, you can see me tossing the cabbage. I'm going to go over the cabbage. I'm adding a little bit at a time as I toss it. And the leaves of the cabbage are becoming translucent. They're cooking down. They're becoming tender. Onions are can be translucent as well, which is the procedure that I'm doing on the right hand side. I have my onions going on the right hand side, becoming translucent to prepare for my lentils, and I have the cabbage on the left side, tossing them as well to prepare for the next steps of the cabbage. And make sure that you cover your cabbage. If not, they will not cook as fast or how you want them. You need that steam for cabbage. Between that oil and the liquid and the steam, you're constantly breaking down the cabbage. Also, in my cabbage, I used a little bit of apple cider vinegar. For people that don't know, or this is something new to them, or they maybe don't do any type of vinegar in their cabbage, I like to use vinegars, or in particular, I am using apple cider in my dish. I'm getting the sweetness from the apple, and I am getting the acid from the vinegar, which is the cider part. And acids, for people that don't know, breaks down pretty much anything. A lemon, vinegar, it will cook. If you put lemon on any type of fish, it will cook it. If you put it on there raw, it will cook it. So yes, people put lemon on their fish. However, it's good to put it on there during the cooking process or during the marination stages, to where you are getting ready to cook it. I wouldn't put any type of acid in anything unless I wanted that to happen purposely. I wouldn't use any type of that to marinate it. But that is a good way to make most meats tender, to marinate them in some type of acid. That way you're breaking down the muscles and the tissues of the meat. Also, like ceviche. Ceviche is a seafood dish. It includes raw. Excuse me. It includes, for some people it looks raw like that, but it's not raw or whatever. It starts raw and then it's cooked. Sushi. Excuse me. Ceviche is a cooked product that uses acidities to cook the product to the correct temperature. And if you do your research, what about that, there is lower temperatures that are considered rare, like a medium rare for steaks and stuff like that. However, that's not the terminology. I'm just trying to bring across my point. Like, there's no such thing as a rare fish, so don't use that. I'm just trying to get the thought process over that. Pretty much ceviche is cooked to the proper internal temperature of safe eating, and it is used with acids. I know you all can't really see too much as far as inside the pots. That's why I'm kind of bringing some over. But this is the lentils I was talking about earlier in the bowl that swelled up. I put them back in the water to make sure that they all rinsed off of dirt before I put them in a pan to cook. But you still see that there's pretty much, or you may not be able to see, but I pretty much didn't fill the water up all the way to the top, and I didn't add any more water in there. The same amount of water that was in there stayed in there because the water that I put in there I used to rinse off the grain, and I just poured the water back out. Now I'm making sure that my onions are translucent, and I did use the red palm oil um, and bacon fat in the lentils. And in the cabbage, I only used bacon fat. I didn't use the red palm oil. It could have been a good touch. However, I didn't do that. I don't. There's certain things I'm not going to do when it comes to certain dishes. I'm continuing to toss the cabbage. I already went over the carrots and stuff with you all. That's kind of pretty simple. And the only thing that I did that I wanted to mention was sometimes when you get those carrots out of the package and they're at Kroger's or any type of store, sometimes they look ashy or they might be white and stuff like that. And instead of going through your time and stuff like that and peeling it, if you want to peel them, that's fine. I'm eating my food, so what I did was it's a good. You can use a towel, a clean towel, or a paper towel, and you can wipe off carrots using water and make sure that you're rubbing them to get the dirt off. That's the last bowl of cabbage, you all. That's the only thing that I was trying to make a note of. So that one was not weight, but that was the last bowl of cabbage. Getting back to the carrots, you can make sure that they're clean and have that pretty shiny orange on them just by using a paper towel or a clean cloth. That's one way. You can also peel it. You can also do some other things that maybe you've seen or other people have shown you. And then the last thing that I would say, which is the actual procedure that I did, is I used the back of a butter knife and I literally scraped up and down on the carrot. It literally removes the first layer of skin and is so much quicker, and then you can still get your natural flavors. Like some of the stuff in produce, you already know. Like nobody washes the already washed salad. You know what I mean? So yes, you should wash your carrots, but trust me, there's many things that is done in the factory that you may be tempted to wash off, but I know that people do not wash off. So regardless of how your opinions are of how you feel about this particular my method is okay with me and up to you. However, this is what I did for my channel and my dish. I just used the back of a butter knife and I scraped it and I made sure that it was free of all dirt and debris. And they were actually very, very, very pretty, and that color was very vibrant. Also, that is a very key factor when it comes to produce, to make sure that your greens are green, that your green leaves or any type of leafy vegetables are leafy and not wilted. If they don't stand straight up in the air, that's not crisp. That's wilted. If they're leaning over, they're looking like a dead plant, that's wilted. You don't want that. Put it back. If there's holes in it, put it back. If there's too much dirt and debris that may have looked like something went wrong, then just be mindful. However, you want all of your produce to be fresh and crisp for the best quality. As you can see, I showed you every individual cabbage that I had. Those, even the wilted leaves were looking very, very vibrant and stuff like that. Now, a lot of these colors and vibrant colors have to do with stuff that the manufacturers are doing. Like everyone knows, or if you do not know, tomato is not a year-round fruit because it is a fruit, and some people, debate about that as well as if it's a vegetable or a fruit. If I'm not mistaken, please quote me on that. And if I did make a mistake or any mistakes that you all have caught, please put them in the inbox or comment section. I'm learning from you all, and you all are learning from me. It's not one-sided. And to continue, tomatoes are greenhouse, so it's a seasonal vegetable. However, when you and I'll stick to society's vegetable of the tomato, but just so you'll know the facts or whatever like that. But the tomatoes are not seasonal. Neither are strawberries. And when they want those to be developed in the demand that has been created by our population and stuff like that, and the wants and stuff like that of people, they make sure that they have that product year round, and they use something that's called a greenhouse, and it's pretty much a man-made room that may be big or a certain size, where you can create the temperature and the control of whatever the product is, to be grown. So like say a fish, for people that don't know my channel and stuff like that, you know how I am with analogies. For fish, it's the same thing. That's a greenhouse. The tank is a greenhouse. You're structuring that environment to be um, a certain way for that species or that person. So for turtles or fish like that, they have to be a certain size. They have to be a certain temperature. They have to be a certain lighting and stuff like that. That's creating that environment for that species. That way they can develop that lifespan and or prosper to become whatever it's going to be. And it's the same thing with fruits and vegetables. They place them in these rooms that are researchers and scientists and stuff like that, and even more of the agriculture department and stuff like that. They know all about what it needs, the moisture, the humidity, and stuff like that of the product to make it grow, and create it. So just be careful if you are one of those people. If you care, if you are one of those people that like to stay as organic as possible, as healthy as possible, and stuff like that, make sure you stick to organic, grass-fed beef, which beef that is fed, excuse me, cows that are fed grass, and not other things as far as pesticides and stuff and grains and corns that are not even supposed to be consumed by the human, let alone the animal. And then and the human is consuming the animal, so the animal is still compromising the human, which is the same reason for these man-made diseases as far as E. coli, which comes from beef, etc., etc., etc. I am showcasing the baby deal that I'm going to be using in my lentils. I'm also showcasing 2 bunches of cilantro and the 2 bunches of turnips that I showed at the first time, and that are now on the cutting board. All in which are very green, very vibrant, very fresh, very crisp, as I explained earlier. I'm still cleaning as I go. I also will be getting ready to show and display how to clean turnips. In the same way you clean these turnips, you can clean kale the same way. Any leafy greens that you may want to use, um, kale, collards, you can use the same method. Take the greens off of the stem, and you will see how this is done momentarily. I'm trying to give you all feedback and information as I keep up with the video. I wanted to mention something earlier, and I wanted to make sure you all were still following the video. It may come to me in a minute. Right now, I'm just preparing the sink again because I have been washing dishes and stuff like that. So when I'm washing dishes, I'm washing dishes. When I'm cleaning food, I make sure that I pre-clean the sink before that food is going in there to be cleaned or soaked and everything like that. Continuing to wash my hands as well as I go along, which is very, very important. Also making sure that I'm putting things back in the refrigerator where they go and not keeping them out on the counter to where they're subjected to time temperature damage, which is any type of product that is not in the proper temperature, um, which will make food spoil. It will make people sick because once it develops that bacteria multiplies during while it sits and during the cooking process, which is how people get sick. I told you guys, bowls are going to be your friend. I have lots of bowls. I have lots of strainers, which a strainer is also a colander in culinary lingo, culinary terminology, excuse me. So you want to make sure that you do have the correct equipment and things that you need. And there's also ways to get around stuff and stuff. There's many ways to do things and shortcuts and stuff like that. Not shortcuts that's going to make people sick, but shortcuts that's going to make life easier for you. I actually used the colander earlier for the cabbage, and I'm using the colanders again for the turnips to make sure that they are clean and dry before I'm cooking them, especially with the cabbage. Not more so the turnips or that I'm working with now, but the cabbage. I wanted to make sure that they were dry. That way, there's not additional water going into that grease, messing up the procedure. When you do add fats or anything to grease, you have to make sure that is proper because you will mess up the oil. Once you mess up the oil, it will not fry properly. I'm displaying and going over now the greens and what you should look for, and I did display that earlier. The holes, you don't want that. If it is, you can throw it away. um, you want clean leaves, and then you want to rip them off of the stem, and you can pinch it in the middle and rip it right off, or you can take it from the top, which is the next procedure that is going to be shown, and you can peel it down, exposing the stem, and then come back down with your fingers tightly wrapped around the stem and just literally pull down on the stem, and the greens will come off. Anything that's left on the stem, pick it off if you would like. And that red bowl behind me is the bowl that I'm using for my quote unquote trash, which we call waste. Anything that's going into the trash from product that we're not cooking. And this is the second method that we're going over now. Expose the stem at the top first and then peel down. Once you get the hang of it, you'll see me I'm dropping the stems in the red waste bowl, and I'm now going to work and I'm continuing to clean the turnip greens. Now that you all know how to do it, I'm going and I'm finishing the procedure. Like I said, this is cooking. This is already time consuming. Like I said, I like to do things different. I'm not really cliche, so I like to explain and allow you just to watch me at work, and as I enjoy and love my craft. I told you motion. This is a deep pan, and there's so much cabbage. It's still firm as it's still breaking down and stuff like that. So it is I'm being a little aggressive here. You have to know what to be aggressive with at times, and then when to have a soft hand. You do not want to be aggressive with a knife. That's not a time. But yes, when you're cooking your food and you're doing things like this or grilling, you want to be aggressive. You want to move quick. You want to move fast to get to the next thing. That is what I've always was taught, and that's also my MO as well as my energy. Um, Anything I do, I would like to get it done efficiently and move on to the next thing. What they say, if you can lean, you can clean. Same thing in the kitchen, like that. If there's something that needs to be done, it can be done. If there's something that you need to do later on, why not? Why do it later on? Do it now, wrap it up, put it in the refrigerator, and it's already ready to go for you when you're ready. This cuts down on time. It cuts down on frustration levels. It cuts down on other people that may be over you in the kitchen for long periods of time. Also when I'm eating and stuff like that, I tend to, which is actually what I'm doing now. You're probably thinking, okay, where's all this food going and stuff like that. Trust and believe it's going to be gone if my the people that my family and stuff like that, and people that I stay with and stuff like that, they don't eat it, or others and stuff like that, or myself. Well, first of all, I eat a lot. This is gonna be going by myself or whatever like that. So, but I like to cook over the week, or for the entire week sometimes. And sometimes it may reach close to the end, and sometimes it's midway. It gives me maybe 3 days and stuff like that, and then at least I'll just be, cooking additional quick things. But it's all about being smart and making the correct decisions and stuff like that, especially when I'm working and stuff like that and I'm not home every day. This stuff has to be prepared, because when I need to go, when I'm ready to go, when it's time for me to go to work, if I'm tired and I'm coming home, I like to just throw stuff in the microwave and go upstairs. I tell y'all that my favorite thing to cook is eggs. I will make eggs in less than 10 minutes and go upstairs just so I can have something on my stomach and lay down. I'm one of the people that I do not worry about breakfast for breakfast, and I do not worry about lunch for lunch, and I do not worry about dinner for dinner. If I want to have lasagna at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So, yes, as we're cleaning the turnips, and you'll also see me cleaning the cilantro as well as the dill momentarily. And it's the same procedure. Pick them off the leaves. Now, some people, they don't like doing this. They may be a little bit lazy, or they may. It's time consuming. You can see that I'm literally just moving around, and I'm taking my time with it and stuff like that. But if you're really doing this and you have a lot of people to feed and stuff like that, yes, it's very time consuming, and I would suggest you get someone's help. You feel as though you can't do it on yourself and in the proper time. So, yes, but the key is just to eliminate, especially with turnips, collards, or those main greens. You do not want to see not one stem. Maybe one is fine and stuff like that, but you don't want those big, big stems in there. Somebody is going to tear you apart. But stuff like cilantro, to where those stems are really, really skinny and stuff like that. Um, Let me switch subjects really quick. Like thyme. Thyme is a herb, but if you don't be careful, if you don't remove all of those stems and stuff like that, it'll still be included in the food sometimes, and you can't see it because it does cook down. But it'll be like a line or a stem, almost like maybe a fish bone, and it can choke you. It could be a hazard, and also, nobody wants to have to spit anything out of their mouths while they're eating, even though it does happen and stuff like that. And sometimes we do like that when it comes to different dishes and bones and fish and stuff like that. But in certain dishes, it's a no. Nobody wants to be spitting out or what's this and finding stuff. Oh, hey, you put this in there. The job of a cook is to cook, have a finished product and a finished dish without really anyone. People can hey, did you put this in it? Or I taste this. That's fine, but you don't want them to see something in the dish that you put in there that's not supposed to be in there. So as I am continuing to, that's a lot of waste, but that's pretty much the norm of what you have at the end. That's our waste bowl right there, and you can see all of the greens are in the sink now, and they are getting ready to be washed. So when it comes to turnips and any type of greens, kale, collards, whatever like that, after they are de-stemmed, which is the proper terminology for the procedure that we did for the to take off the stems. Once they're de-stemmed, you can cut them down in strips, literally, just depending on how you want your product or your end result. People, they'll take their time and they'll cut their collars in strips, and there is no easy way without sitting there doing every little strip. Literally just grab a bunch and you can just cut it in cubes. Like I said, it does break down, it does cooks down. So what that does is it creates a nice cohesive bowl of greens. That way when you get it, it's nice and full on your spoon. Now, if I was to put these greens in there like this and stuff like that, it'll be just big, long greens floating around. Nobody wants that when it comes to just a solid dish of just greens only, collards only, kale only. You want to break those greens down and stuff like that. That way they're cooking faster. That way they are grabbing those seasons and they're absorbing those flavors and everything that happens in the cooking process that we want. Now, these turnips, you'll see me cleaning. As I'm cleaning them, I'm literally putting them in the bowl as I pull them apart. I'm literally just ripping them because for my particular dish, I did want them to look as they were a bigger size and not just floating around looking crazy or stupid. I didn't want them that small or that full. I did want them to look a certain way, and you'll see at the end of the video where all of the pictures will be released on each dish, the end result of all of them and how it actually looks, and things will come together and make a little bit more sense. So the tomato paste that I did use in the lentils, you won't see that at all. That absorbs and becomes a part of the sauce and the juice and goodness of the lentils. The tomatoes that are diced, that I did use from a can, are in there, and you'll be able to see those. Now, I do use some type of stuff like that. However, usually I don't use anything processed. I don't use anything canned. I don't use pre this, pre that, pre chopped. I don't use any of those. That's not a bad thing. If you want to use those, you can use those. However, just make sure that it's as fresh as fresh. Sometimes those pre onions and peppers, they may be sitting too long in their own juice and they will go bad extremely fast. And if you cook them while they're bad, you'll know because your whole house will be filled with this smell that doesn't smell good, and you can kind of tell. You can tell bad product and stuff like that. So just be mindful. Da, 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 da. Here I'm starting on the carrots, washing the carrots, and I'm using the back of the knife that I'm getting ready to get, that I explained to you all earlier. That's the knife, use the back of the knife. I'm sorry, I did use my finger. I was not trying to give y'all the finger. But I was just illustrating that, yes, use the back of the knife. And make sure you cut off both of the ends of the carrot where all that dirt is and stuff like that. It's just best to just cut it off instead of trying to clean it, because you really can't get all of the dirt off. Cabbage comes from the ground, carrots come from the ground, cilantro comes from the ground. All of these things that I'm using, turnips come from the ground. All of these things that I'm using usually have a lot of dirt and debris on it. So you just want to make sure that everything is clean, everything is sanitary for your cooking. Forgive me for going back and forth. I wanted to make sure that I'm following you all through the video while I am informing you all. I'm going to get back to the talk of processed foods. Processed foods are okay, just consume them in moderation. Like I said, with processed foods comes all the extra sodium, um, as well as some other things that I rather not work with. Now, the only reason why I did use diced tomatoes in a can is because you have to think about what you're cooking and the amount that you're cooking, and I'll go over quantities as well. That way you can understand a little bit. But yes, you don't want to use fresh tomatoes. And if you're familiar with tomatoes or produce, tomatoes will go bad faster than turnips. Turnips may go bad faster than the eggplant. You know, you have to know the product that you're using, that you're cooking. Even if you was making a gumbo, everything in gumbo usually have a longer life expectancy, except for the crab and the shrimp, which is really the main thing that people crave and rave about when it comes to gumbo. But you don't want to make a big batch of that you know is not going to be eaten, that you're going to keep in the refrigerator, and then it goes bad. It's not going bad, it's still good, but the sensitive things that you have in there, that crab, that shrimp, they go bad first. Now once that's bad, you know the whole dish is bad. You can't consume something that has one bad thing in it. You think you're going to take it out and be able to still consume it. That bacteria is still in there, etc., etc. So just be mindful what you're cooking, how you're cooking it, who's consuming it, if they're consuming it like that. You know what I mean? Just be mindful. You don't want to use something that's going to go bad within a couple of days, and then now you wasted a whole bunch of product when you could have maybe used a different brand of something, or used this instead of that. So you want to also make sure that you're keeping ops on that as well. Also, let's go into the quantities as we are coming to an end with the audio, and then I can allow you all to finish watching me at work, and feel free to add your input and look forward to the finished product at the end of the video, in which there will be pictures. Excuse me while I'm still working on a lot of systematically putting the videos together and making them a little bit more intriguing, instead of so basic and stuff like that. I'm not hard on myself, so I think some of them may be, basic, but maybe you all don't think that. When it comes to quantities in cooking, as you can see, the reason why I'm literally using 2 bunches of turnips and 2 bunches of cilantro and baby dill, is because I literally use 4 bags of lentils, which I noted earlier. 1 bag of any type of grain will swell and make enough of, depending on who it is, but it'll make enough for definitely one person. But when you're cooking in bulk and you want those flavors to come across, the more you cook, the more seasons you're gonna have to add, the more of whatever you're gonna have to add. Let me give you an example. If you're cooking, let me give you an example that maybe familiarized. If I'm cooking 1 pack of cornbread and it requires 2 eggs and maybe a half a cup of milk, that's fine. You're using one. If you use 2 boxes of cornbread, you're now going to have to increase your eggs from 2 to 4. You're now going to have to increase your milk from a half cup to a whole cup. 2 halves make a whole. 2 plus 2 is 4. So whatever you're doing, you most likely are going to have to um, increase those flavors by adding this, or either and like I said, as you become more knowledgeable and get more wisdom, you'll know how to do certain things and when to do certain things. Now, yes, if I'm cooking for somebody that is, judgmental, I care what they think, and that's all the time. But I'm just saying, you have to know also when to cut corners. If you're cooking for 1,000 people plus like that, yeah, you might not be able to use all of the good stuff that you want to use, because that's going to be very expensive. It's going to be whatever like that. So sometimes, yes, It happens all the time in hotels or what like that. Any type of environments the way you're cooking for masses of people. Also, it's the fact that you may not want to or have to put all that stuff in there because it is feeding multiple people, and those multiple people, those 10 may be able to have tomatoes. Those other 10 may not be able to have tomatoes. So sometimes it's also good to cook not basic, but um, develop basic strategies, I guess I can say, or either just less is more sometimes. And sometimes I have to say that to myself also. But yes, less is more sometimes, depending. But when it's time to go all out and stuff like that, don't be afraid to do it, and don't be afraid to experiment when it comes to cooking. Again, like I said, there's so many different ways that you can do things that it's up to you. So it's definitely okay to have fun with what you're doing and try different things. There's no right and wrong when it comes to cooking. May not come out right, but there's no right and wrong. Or maybe that come out as appetizing as you wanted it to, or maybe that someone else wanted it to, or is used to it tasting. However, there is no right and wrong. The only right and wrong that I see that comes into play is, yes, when it comes to sanitary issues, washing your hands, keeping your hands clean if you're not using gloves. People think you're supposed to use gloves all the time. Yes, maybe, but if you're um, all of this stuff that I'm pretty much dealing with hands on is going to be cooked. It's going to be at high temperature to where that bacteria is going to be good and going to be gone and cooked off. Now, yes, that's not to go to say to to become nasty as far. Oh, you know, Kareem said I could just no. Still wash your hands. Still make sure you're being clean. Still be organized, and include just everything to be safe. Like just the littlest thing. The more that you're safe, the less chances, of anything happening. And I can actually say in all the 20 years of my life, like that, nothing has ever perspired to where anyone's ever eaten my food and anyone's becoming sick. That has never happened. So if things like that do happen, you definitely know that it's a direct link most of the times to something that you ate, someone that dealt with your food that wasn't the cleanest or the most organized, and also that comes into play during storage of food, which is pretty much before you cook it, and also right before you cook it, as far as the thawing process. A lot of people tend to just throw a frozen whatever and just sit on the counter. That is not good because that whatever is developing bacteria after it goes down to temperature. Yes, while it's coming down, it's still developing. It can develop certain bacterias, and then once it gets to a certain level, when it's cold, it's fine. Being and just to give you a little bit more insight about that, the temperature danger zone ranges from 41 degrees, which is the coldest for foods, to be at a safe level, safe eating storage level, 41 degrees for produce. And there's some things that are slightly different. I won't get into and confuse everybody or confuse you all. However, if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't as of right now. And that's okay. You can learn, you can research, or you can ask questions. And the high temperature being 135 degrees. This is a storage temperature. This is right before the cooking stages. So something cold needs to always be 41 degrees or lower, and something hot that's supposed to be kept hot, something that's supposed to be medium warm and savory, maybe even sweet. But if you're cooking anything, it needs to be above 135 degrees. 135 is actually a temperature holding time that the food is already cooked. Um, and it also could be a internal cooking temperature, because there is certain things that are able to be cooked at 135, and it's just a certain rarity, which is becomes medium rare for steaks. I mean rare for steaks, medium rare, and well done. However, you will learn those different things if you don't already know them when time presents itself. Even if you eat out a lot, you some of those terminologies you have heard. I am starting to cook my rice. At this time, we have not prepped the carrots. We're getting ready to prep the carrots. I did say that you do want to make sure that everything's prepped. However, if you're multitasking and you're cooking while you go, it's okay to have things ready, already washed. That way, all you have to do is cut and then place right in the pan, season and do whatever you got to do and start cooking. I'm not ready to use the stuff on the cutting board and the other in the carrots. So that's why they're sitting aside while I'm seasoning, while I'm starting my rice, and I just put 4 cups of rice into that pan. I'm actually doing this rice a little bit different. I'm illustrating that that's 1 cup. Most people they boil their water first and then they put their rice in and then they allow it to come up to temperature and put a lid over it to allow it to steam. The procedure that I'm doing with my rice is I put a little bit of oil in the pan. I use butter. I use red palm oil. I put the rice in there, all 4 cups, and then I season the rice. I'm seasoning the rice right now. I'm going to mix it all up, and then I'm going to add the water once everything comes up to temperature. And then all I have to do is put the lid on and allow it to come up to temperature. Wait about 20 minutes, which is the general traditional world time that everybody is kind of familiar with when it comes to rice. Um, like I said, usually with the regular traditional classic style of cooking rice, they season the water really good and then they add the rice. It's the same thing, but I actually like the way my rice comes out consistent at all times when I do it this way, and I'm able to do it other ways in the oven and all type of way, and it still comes out. However, doing it this way, you're allowing each and every single grain to be coated with that oil, coated with that seasoning. So for me, what I like that I am actually permeating the grain of the rice with the seasoning and with the flavor profile that I want and with those fats. That way, also while it's steaming and stuff like that, you don't have that where your rice is sticky, is clumped together, is overdone, is underdone. I can literally just stop it right before it gets and allow that steam, that residual steam, which anything that you take off the stove like that, the food is still going to continue to cook or whatever like that. So sometimes with cook, well, not sometimes, with certain things, you want to pull it earlier than others because if not, it will overcook. I do that when it comes to fish, maybe finishing the oven, put it a little early because I want it to be nice and flaky. Sometimes, and I'm thinking. I use that method as well with cooking with baking and with cookies. And baking it actually comes in to play more often where you will pull the product earlier so your product is not over baked or dense or anything like that. You have the best moisture possible. As I'm being aggressive with this cabbage, I am still working with it, twisting it. I'm still turning it, putting motion and stuff like that, as you can see, until I'm ready for the other dishes. While I am cooking my rice and stuff like that and multitasking, I have on the right hand side, I consolidated my oil from the bacon, and that is my seasoning cabinet as well. So thank you all for joining. I again subscribe. Feel free to comment or reply, and remember our slogan: growth is inevitable with understanding, life experiences, and knowledge.